The night of May 7, 1863, settled over the Virginia wilderness like a heavy shroud of chaos. Jackson's lightning strike had shattered the Union right, driving them back for miles. But the battle was far from over. Around the clearing of the Chancellorsville Tavern, the remnants of the Federal Army scrambled to forge a new line in the dark, their cries echoing through the timber. In the shadows, the moans of the wounded filled the woods. Shattered units from the 11th Corps drifted into other regiments, as officers used lanterns and desperate shouts to reform their ranks.
Rally to me! Form line of fire!
Meanwhile, General Robert E. Lee was preparing the final, crushing blow.
All steady. Prepare to advance. Yes, General!
With Jackson wounded and carried from the field, command of the attacking wing fell to J.E.B. Stuart, the legendary cavalry commander. Stuart immediately began reorganizing the battered divisions that had fought all afternoon. The objective was clear. At dawn, they would strike directly at the heart of the Union center at Chancellorsville. As the first light filtered through the forest canopy on May 3rd, both sides stood ready. The Union troops had carved out a horseshoe-shaped defense around the Chancellor House. Artillery was jammed into forest clearings, and infantry dug frantic breastworks of timber and earth. Hooker still held 70,000 men in the area. But the morale of many units had been hollowed out by the previous day's shock. Lee and Stuart were now coordinating a massive pincer movement, one wing striking from the east, the other from the west. If these two forces met at Chancellorsville, the entire Union army would be squeezed into a killing jar. The assault began at 5:00 a.m. Confederate artillery opened fire, the shells screaming through the trees, tearing through wood and earth alike. Moments later, the Confederate infantry surged forward from multiple directions. Gray-clad regiments charged through the thickets, firing as they advanced. The Union troops fought back with desperate fury. In many places, the lines were less than 50 yards apart. The smoke became so thick that visibility vanished. Men fought by sound alone, guided by the roars of their officers. The most brutal combat centered on the Chancellor House itself. Union units clung to every scrap of timber, but the Confederate pressure was unrelenting, closing in from both flanks. Lee had successfully united his army.
The attack! Friendly!
Hooker's defense was being strangled. At the height of the struggle, a Confederate shell slammed into a wooden pillar of the Chancellor House. The impact sent a heavy beam crashing down onto General Hooker as he stood on the porch. Stunned and incapacitated, the Union commander-in-chief was momentarily unable to lead. It was a fatal blow to the Federal command structure. Orders stopped flowing. Chaos took hold.
No retreat! Forward, boys! I can see that!
Then, a new horror emerged. The intense shelling and musketry ignited the dry undergrowth. Fire began to race through the brush and dead leaves, a hellish inferno swallowing the battlefield. Wounded men unable to move watched as the flames crept closer. Their comrades fought a dual battle holding the line, while desperately dragging the injured out of the reaching fire. The scene was one of pure, unmitigated nightmare. By 10:00 am, the weight of the Confederate assault became too much to bear. The Union lines buckled and broke, retreating from the crossroads. The Chancellor House was now a towering inferno, black smoke billowing into the Virginia sky. As Confederate troops poured into the center, General Robert E. Lee rode his horse Traveler through the smoke and into the clearing. His men erupted into a thunderous roar, tossing their hats and screaming his name. It was a rare moment in war, a commander honored by his troops in the very heart of a burning battlefield. By May 6th, Hooker had retreated back across the Rappahannock River. The Battle of Chancellorsville was over. Tactically, it was Robert E. Lee's greatest masterpiece. Outnumbered 2-1, he had dared to split his army, executed a legendary flank march, and shattered a superior foe. But the victory was bought at a terrible price. Stonewall Jackson, the man who made the masterpiece possible, died days later from complications of his wounds. The South had won the battle but lost its most indispensable general. Just 2 months later, Lee would lead his army north once more. That campaign would lead to a small town in Pennsylvania, to a crossroad called Gettysburg, where the tide of the war would turn forever.